The absolute cheek of this government knows no bounds. At the same time as slapping private schools with hundreds of thousands of pounds of fees and hammering them with the VAT, which is having a devastating effect on hundreds of thousands of children, a government spokesperson says to The Times that all charities must show public benefit, and we expect charitable private schools to continue this through their partnership work with the state-funded sector with means-tested bursaries. Of course, they mean that the private schools are having to cut back on the bursaries, the free places that they provide, or the discounted places that they provide, and the partnerships and the collaboration with state schools that they also run and provide, such as the use of their facilities and so on. They have to cut back on that because they're having to cut costs somewhere. This government spokesperson wants it both ways. They want both all of the fees that they would ordinarily get as a charity, which they are removing, and they still want them to do the charitable work. Now, for the avoidance of doubt, it is not and has never been a tax break. It is a charitable exemption, or at least it was, because education should be a charitable exemption. It is not a luxury service. And furthermore, in defending this abhorrent policy, in my view, it's reported that Rachel Reeves is now spending hundreds of thousands of pounds of taxpayers' money on multiple King's Counsel to defend this in what is being described as an unprecedented legal challenge. Other experts have commented, and I agree, that this is exceptionally rare for this sort of policy to go to court to be challenged by so many claimants. And this is one such challenge that may well be extremely embarrassing for this government if they lose this in court, if this policy is found to be discriminatory. Because if they lose this policy in court, they may have to wind back this VAT policy on private schools, and of course the hundreds of thousands of pounds that it's likely to cost running this to trial with multiple King's Counsel is all going to be a complete waste of money. One of the principal arguments in this claim, in this judicial review, is that this tax upon private schools breaches the children's right to education, because for many of them it makes it unaffordable. Now, some people will say, well, they can just go to the local state school, but that has obviously proved to be impossible for many children because there just simply are no places in many areas, and they've had to travel 20, 30 miles away, and the local authorities had to pay for taxis to get them there. But not only that, even those that are sort of within 20 to 30 miles, some of them just don't have access to the same courses. The schools just don't run the same courses. Some of them, many of them have special educational needs which will not be met by the state system. And so for many of these children, they will have or have already lost access to that education. And thus this argument makes for quite the compelling legal challenge. James Gardner of Sinclair's Law, who's representing the group of claimants, said tens of thousands of parents are behind this unprecedented challenge to a totemic and harsh government policy. The stakes for pupils with severe special education needs are unimaginably high. Even the government admits that the state system is completely broken and it's getting worse every year. But the government isn't backing down. It's committed vast resources to this battle and is fighting it hard. A government spokesperson, on the other hand, says we do not comment on ongoing litigation matters, and then regurgitates the same line they've said before. Ending tax breaks for private schools will raise this amount of money by 2029 to help deliver 6,500 new teachers, raise school standards, supporting 94% of children in state schools to achieve and thrive. All of which I take with a huge handful of salt, because I simply don't believe the figures. I personally don't believe they will raise the money they will say they will. I don't believe they'll recruit the teachers that they will. And I don't believe that this is going to have much of an effect on the standards across the country at all. And even if they did hit the target of 6,500 teachers, which I doubt, that would still be fewer than 1 in every 5 schools, given that there's almost 30,000 schools across the country. Now, just very quickly, one thing I've been really concerned about just lately is what I've been reading about the government setting up artificial intelligence to scour and monitor the internet, looking for what they consider to be concerning activity or posts or comments and things of this nature. And they create lists of people that they want to target and investigate because they are worried about what you're saying online. In case you say something that sort of labels you and stereotypes you as a certain kind of person that they then want to further investigate. Well, if you are worried about being monitored in this way and you don't want to be monitored, There are ways to stay anonymous, and that is why I am very pleased to partner with NordVPN on my channel, as I have done for some time. They keep no logs and no records of what you do and what you visit when you're online, and particularly when you're out and about in public Wi-Fi networks, it will keep your devices secure from third-party hackers as well. And recently, and this is really interesting, some networks and apps and services and so on are trying to restrict traffic that comes from a virtual private network, such as NordVPN. But NordVPN has recently released a new protocol called NordWhisper, which will not only disguise your internet traffic as being anonymous, but it will also disguise the fact that it's coming from a VPN in the first place, thus keeping you protected and secure even when the network or the app is trying to restrict such traffic. So if you've been in the position before, or you've not signed up to NordVPN because you're worried about certain apps blocking VPN traffic, well then you're in luck, and it's time to subscribe with my discount below, because NordWhisper is designed specifically to overcome these situations that are ordinarily blocking VPN traffic. And as a partner to my channel here, you can get 4 months extra free on top of any NordVPN plan, and of course a 30-day money-back guarantee. Go to the URL nordvpn.com/BBB, easy to remember, nordvpn.com/BBB for your discount. You'll get 4 months added to your plan when you subscribe, and immediately you can download it on all of your devices and protect them, whether you're at home or on your travels, particularly when you're in public Wi-Fi. I cannot stress enough, it is important to protect your devices from third-party hackers when you're out and about connecting to unknown networks. You just simply shouldn't connect to an unknown network without some layer of protection. So check out nordvpn.com/BBB for your discount, and the peace of mind is worth every penny. Looking at another stark report on this by Kristina Murkett, which I will link the article in the description below. She says, when defending the controversial decision to impose VAT on private schools, the Labour government promised that the end would justify the means. The money raised would be used to recruit 6,500 more teachers over the next 5 years. Yet with no concrete details on how it would find and retain those teachers, this ambition seemed less achievable than ever. A new report from the National Foundation of Education Research has found that the teacher vacancy rate is 6 times higher than it was in 2010, and that this is having an impact on pupils. In 2015, only 10% of secondary pupils were in classes of more than 30, whereas that figure is now 15%. She goes on to say the 6,500 shortfall in teachers is an unrealistically small number. To put this in perspective, last year the UK recruited 13,000 fewer teachers than required, and every year around 40,000 teachers leave the profession. In STEM subjects, the problem is even worse. In 2022, the UK only recruited 17% of the required physics teachers, meaning we'll need 3,500 more teachers just to cover this subject alone. And to make matters worse, Labour is now apparently diluting this original promise, all, by the way, detracting from the original point of the point was taxing the private schools to pay for these teachers. That's now changed. Labour's now changed this originally proposed 6,500 teachers a year to this will be over the term, because according to Bridget Phillipson, this is a rather large number of teachers. And yet it's still too low, Kristina Murkett writes, and effectively meaningless, because it is also not clear whether this target will include the extra number of teachers retained in the sector or just new recruits. Keir Starmer therefore isn't exactly promising more teachers, just more than there would otherwise be. In other words, I agree with Kristina, it's meaningless. This 6,500 number is meaningless. It's put out to convince people, and this is what really frustrates me with politics. These messages are put out to convince people that this is the right thing to do. Only then we realise, well, actually, it's not over 1 year or every year. It's over the term, and in fact, the number's somewhat meaningless anyway, because the amount of teachers that they need and the amount of teachers that are leaving, the numbers just don't stack up. All the while attacking what really should be the pride of Britain, the private school sector that we have, very high standards in many of those schools. We should be supporting that and championing that rather than hammering it with extra fees. Many of you may not know that it's not just VAT on the school fees, but they've also removed the business rates relief for charitable status schools, meaning they will now pay hundreds of thousands of pounds a year extra just on the buildings that they already use. not going to more education, not going to working with the rest of the community, which this government spokesperson insists that they do, even though they are taxing them to hell. And many, if not most, of the very smaller ones are likely to close as a result of this. Now, Bridget Phillipson will say, well, many of them close every year. That's true. Many businesses close every year, but that doesn't mean we should just now slap on extra taxes because to hell with them and it doesn't really matter. In fact, we should be supporting those and doing what we can to help and support those schools because, again, what many people don't seem to click and realize is that for every single child that is in a private school, they are saving the state at least £8,000 a year in taxpayers' money, which, by the way, the parents of whom are already contributing to that local state school because they already pay their taxes. And so their place is not only already paid for, but it is freeing up that money for someone else to use, whilst they are paying into the private school sector, which is supporting the economy, supporting jobs, and supporting everything else. But, of course, Labour now says that this is the right thing to do. But coming back to the point, this is now a fairly unprecedented legal challenge, which might end in a huge embarrassment for this government if the court decides that this policy needs to be walked back. Because I, for one, can see the court siding with the fact that this is a right to education and that this is interfering probably unlawfully with that right to education. And I, for one, hope that this group of claimants succeed and that the court rules that this policy is unlawful. But just so that you know where the hundreds of thousands of pounds extra are being spent to fight a policy, which is already not really going to do, in my opinion, what they say it's going to do, let me know your thoughts and comments in the box below, because at the same time, it's not just the private schools that are at risk here. We are now reportedly on the brink of recession as her spending cuts are triggering huge job losses and reportedly the biggest job loss in a decade for businesses cutting these jobs, cutting staff, cutting salaries. And without new policy action, we may well see the Office for Budget Responsibility revise down their projections of this surplus of almost £10 billion by 2029 to a deficit of almost £5 billion. And according to Make UK, which is a manufacturing representative body, they say that they've hit difficulties now with the employment taxes and business taxes, and around half of the companies they represent, because obviously they are staff heavy, have halted their hiring process, and 4 in 10 are set to reduce any planned pay increases. So this is not more money in your pocket. In fact, many people will lose their jobs and they will not get the pay rises they were expecting. So this is damage upon damage and compounding damage to businesses across the country. I hate to be the doom and gloom guy, but let me know what you think in the comments. These are real things happening across the country, real policies, and I, for one, am pleased to see that at least one of these is being challenged in court. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Please do subscribe to the channel, keeping it real, and as always, thank you for watching.